Hey, this is Ciderhelm, and welcome back to Learn the League. I'm going to take this series in a different direction than I have in the past. We'll be looking at advanced concepts such as game balance, strategies, and team compositions. In the first movie, I want to lay some groundwork for later movies, so we're going to look at two sets of rock, paper, scissors, then look at what effect this has on overall game balance. As always, if you enjoy this, make sure to check out the ebook at learntheleague.com as it's packed with detailed information like this. Our first rock, paper, scissors is burst damage, sustain, and survivability. To start, a champion with high burst damage can usually kill a champion that relies on sustaining their health and damage over time. For example, assassins and burst mages that can get in range can usually blow up marksmen or supports. On the other hand, champions who can sustain their health over time, such as with lifesteal or spellvamp, can usually whittle down tanks or bulky fighters to get them low enough for a kill. Marksmen or fighters with lifesteal or healing from a support, or mages like Vladimir, fall into this category. And very survivable champions, like the tanks and bulky fighters, tend to do very well when handling assassins and burst mages. This is because they can survive the early burst damage and still lay out their own damage and crowd controls. Even if you haven't seen this spelled out before, chances are it's something you've picked up instinctively. This is why you build a Guardian Angel when the burst is too high, or pick up lifesteal when engagements are more drawn out, or build damage when you really need to blow up targets. But how do champions like Nasus fall into this? After all, he has some decent built-in sustain, fairly strong burst, especially as the game goes longer, and top-tier survivability. Plenty of champions have a mix of 2 or 3 of these attributes, so this model alone isn't enough. The second rock, paper, scissors dynamic is a little more complex, and it has to do with range and mobility. Champions with long-range skill shots tend to be fairly strong against short-range champions that lack mobility. To clarify, not all skill shots are long-range, but nearly all long-range damage comes from skill shots rather than targeted abilities. There's a set of champions who are short-range and lack strong mobility. These champions may have a limited gap closer, but not enough mobility that they could realistically use multiple dashes, blinks, or escapes during an extended fight. These short-range champions tend to have strong targeted or area effect abilities. When they use skill shots, they're easy to land. Because of this, they tend to be pretty good at handling high mobility champions in team fights, as they're likely to land their abilities if mobile champions initiate on the team. Since these champions lack range and mobility, they are usually compensated with high survivability or high damage. And highly mobile champions tend to be very good at closing in on long-range skillshot champions. Not only can they get close, but they often have the tools to avoid the skill shots as well. And since long-range champions tend to be somewhat squishier than short-range champions, it's usually a favorable match for the mobile champion. One interesting takeaway from this is how this works for player skill. Generally speaking, bulky short-range champions that lack mobility also tend to be very easy for new players to pick up and learn. And they work pretty well against hyper-mobile champions, many of whom require high mechanical skill. This balance means new players are not always totally stomped on by experienced players. Also, this shows a big break in what we define as skill in the community. A Vayne who executes a pentakill in a high-level game is clearly very mechanically skilled, but she's also given a toolset designed specifically to avoid skill shots. So when she kills skill shot champions, this is what's supposed to happen. So again, she is a skilled player, but that doesn't mean her opponents were less skilled, nor does it mean they were outplayed. It's just the laws of nature at work. It's a dog biting a mailman. It's worth mentioning briefly, I find that a lot of players get frustrated when they can't land skill shots on mobile champions. It sucks, but it's not something you should feel too bad about. The other type of skill is a bit more mental, and it's when a skill shot champion successfully locks down a highly mobile champion. For example, the famous Mad Life Thresh play where he successfully predicts Ezreal's blink and lands his hook on him. For me personally, I find this a lot more satisfying because it means the mailman bit the dog. Going back to the Nasus example, he's very strong, but he's strictly a short-range, immobile champion. Even if he's incredibly strong in team fights and localized pushes, mobile champions don't need to engage him, and the long-range champions can often stay at a range. This leads to him being a fairly balanced champion overall, or at least one that doesn't blatantly break the game. Of course, these are not the only balancing mechanisms available. Damage, cooldowns, pushing power, and plenty of other tools also define how powerful a champion is. Player skill and team coordination also matters. With a couple successful ganks, even a hard counter can become a lot easier to deal with. I hope you enjoyed this look at champion balance. From here, I'm going to break this off into 2 separate sets of videos. In the first set, we'll continue looking at league concepts like this, and in the second, we're going to look at specific champions. If you want to learn more, I've written an ebook that is packed with detailed information for players at all skill levels. Check out Learn the League at www.learntheleague.com or by following the link below. Thanks for watching.